Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Bozam Khoshamadin. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad to see we have about 113 of us online today. Welcome to BusinessDNA's launch event again. While we wait for our fellow guests to sign in, we thought we just gonna play a little bit of a game. Usually, we would in our launch events we would try to play some activities with our audience, and that's the best part of the events that I personally really enjoy. This round, I thought it's online, so how to make it happen. So I thought I would maybe give you some numbers about Afghanistan and see your ideas whether it's a fact or it's a fiction. So let's go with the number one. Afghanistan's population, I think, as we all know, is about 31 million to 35 million. I think that's depending on what source we use. What percentage of Afghanistan's population lives below the poverty line? I think it's a very simple one. It's 20%. Fact or fiction? I think you can just write in the chat box if it's a fiction. I think Matijan, Matila Rahmati, thank you, very sharp nama khada, you're saying it's a fiction. Can we say about 17 million people in Afghanistan live below the poverty line? Is that a fact or a fiction? Okay, well, I see some maybes. It's a fact, it's a fact. I think that's great. I think that gives us a sense of, where we are in terms of Afghanistan's population, unfortunately. On another note, given the COVID-19 is pretty much has taken over the world, unfortunately, and Afghanistan is also sort of catching up in terms of the number of people who are being affected. So healthcare systems are really a question that everybody talks about. I'm going to say a statement about our healthcare system. We have 1,000 beds for every 10,000 people in Afghanistan. Fact or fiction? I'm trying to see. Okay, Matijan, you're really fast. Okay, so that's fiction. I think you're all right. It's very low number in Afghanistan, unfortunately. It's statistics from 2019 say it's 5 beds for every 10,000 people and 3 doctors. But you get the idea. It's a very difficult time, and I think that number summarizes it. So in terms of GDP, agriculture has the highest share of the GDP. Fact or fiction? Okay, I see both fact and fiction. I see more facts. Okay. Have you ever thought about the services sector? What portion of the GDP is actually constituted by the services sector? So I think Sandarjan put the number 10%. The highest share of the GDP goes to services in Afghanistan. And I think that's something that, and services defined very broadly. So I think a lot of sectors go into it. I'm going to ask one more. The unemployment rate in Afghanistan is about 10 to 12%. Fact or fiction? Oh, that's again fiction. I think everyone is very aware of it. The number is 30%, but I think that's also because how they define unemployment. So the number could be actually higher than 30% of the population being currently unemployed. And we really hope that the COVID-19 does not increase number anymore. But anyway, before we go into the launch of the program, some house rules about Zoom and web conferences. I'm personally new myself as well, so I thought maybe I would share some best practices. I think everyone is respecting it very well, so we would like the mics to be off as much as possible, and the videos too. And our moderator will try to give you access if you want to say something, or if you would like to share an idea, please, you're welcome to share it in the chat box. We will have a panel discussion throughout the end. So I think if you have questions, you can also write in the chat box. So if you were to look at the agenda, if our moderator can put the agenda on the screen, just to give you a sense of the activities that we will have today. So we would like to keep it very short this time because we understand it's Ramadan. Many of you might be observing at the same time. People and our guests are joining from around the world. So we will open the show a little bit with some information about BusinessDNA and some important updates that we have for our work, and then we would go about launching this edition, and I think that's the exciting part that a lot of us really like to know who is on the cover this time. We used to play a lot of games about it back in during the launch events, but I think this time we will try to keep it a little simple. And after that, we will have a panel discussion. The panel discussion will be about how can businesses in Afghanistan cope with COVID-19. This is talk of the town and talk of the world, actually. And we're trying to see some of our experts and see how they can help businesses in Afghanistan just to stay afloat and hopefully not be affected permanently by the pandemic. And I think that'll be all. So about BusinessDNA. We have been going through quite a lot of changes internally, all for good. I think one aspect of doing business in Afghanistan for a really long time has been access to finance and investment beyond families. And I think BusinessDNA with additional interest from the market, with so much love from you, from the readers, I've been able to make quite an impact on, especially on education in terms of business, sharing the stories of our entrepreneurs in the country, the kind of investments that happen. But before that, a bit of nostalgia to our launch events previously that we had in Afghanistan. We would like to present a short video about from the time that we actually started BusinessDNA, and just showing some clips and videos from a life that is not under quarantine. If our moderator can play the video, please.
BusinessDNA today, our executive magazine. We're very excited that we're finally out and people can like us on Facebook, subscribe for our future issues. Thank you.
ما میتونیم بزنسز افغانستان وضعیتش تحلیلش از طریق این مجله برای جهان و همچنان با شرکت‌های بین‌المللی و کسایی که علاقه‌مند تجارت از افغانستان به اینا برسانیم.
Because it's also a way to encourage the people who are running businesses.
I think this is a good initiative that has been taken by young entrepreneurs in Afghanistan, and it can reflect the positive side of business in Afghanistan beside what is being showed by the media.
We need to promote the younger people to come and invest in Afghanistan. BusinessDNA is one platform where we can promote new ideas, new way of thinking in the younger generation to come forward and help the government and its people by building businesses in this country.
Thank you. Thank you for watching the short clip. I think many of you were there in our launch events. I think one of the topics that is really interesting right now is how COVID-19 is impacting businesses around the world and also in Afghanistan. While there's no formal research currently done, what we hear anecdotally that a lot of businesses have actually entirely closed doors to customers. These are especially in the service industry with such as cafes and restaurants. Some restaurants have, especially in Kabul, for example, have kept going by taking delivery services. But at the same time, COVID-19, I think, as it will end, it will have an impact on a lot of industries. Some may actually have to permanently be damaged, but the rest of them may survive and new industries will emerge. What I hear right now is that some entrepreneurs, they have started new businesses just since COVID-19 reached Afghanistan. One is a small kitchen in Kabul. It's called Sahar Paz. It was very good news that I heard it, that they are cooking home food and then they are delivering it to customers around town. I also heard, and I think it's even great news and very timely, that if we don't have data about problems in Afghanistan or any issues, how can we actually go about solving them? This is an application that one of our contributors, Sarajan Wahidi, has been putting together. It's called Ehtisab, and this collects data directly from citizens and tries to share that with the government and try to impact policy. I think that's a major step that citizens will try to take advantage of. And that's also partly what we were trying to do with BusinessDNA and trying to share information and data about Afghanistan, which is not very readily available. So one of the updates that we had from BusinessDNA is about a major investment in BusinessDNA because of the traction that we had in the market. And we're very happy that this investment is happening to BusinessDNA. And as we were very initially envisioning that BusinessDNA will enable investment in the country at the capacity that it has. And now we have a much larger team with an additional investment. And I think it speaks to the fact that Afghanistan has reached a stage, despite all of the difficulties that it is going through, a stage where entrepreneurs have realized that the best time to actually invest is when things are not going that well, because once things go very well, then everybody will jump in. And also that volatility and uncertainty in the business sector has become part of business models. And I think entrepreneurs realize that. So just, I would like to invite Sanzarjan Kokhar from Afghanistan Holding Group, was invested in BusinessDNA, just say a few words and share his vision.
Sure. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm delighted and honored to be speaking to you. We're really so happy and thrilled to be making investments in BusinessDNA magazine, and we think it's really a critical point of getting the business sector together, discussing, learning about opportunities, helping smaller businesses as well. And we're actually have a big family now, not only with the BusinessDNA into the team, but with the school, with AfghanNet, with the gym. And so we're just so thrilled to be able to contribute in any way to this really great initiative. So thank you to Murtajan, and we're really happy to help in any way we can.
Thank you so much, Sanzarjan. I'm glad that we have the positive news to share about Afghanistan. And while I cannot share details of another 2 investments that I have heard about that actually have taken place in the country, in Kabul, and they also are encouraging. And again, they are in pretty forward-looking businesses in the ICT sector. Both of them, and it's very encouraging that there's investment happening in the country, and that's what we're trying to facilitate through BusinessDNA. I think this is time where we would like to give you a bit more details about our current edition of the magazine. I think I would like to go through very briefly through the table of contents that you will receive the magazine very, very shortly. One very interesting article that I like is whether Afghan businesses can adopt international labor standards and whether it's very expensive for Afghans, should they do it or should they not? And the article you will read on page 12 will actually discuss that. I like the way that it's giving examples of Afghan businesses, especially in the north, who have been trying to apply these labor standards and how it has been helping them in promoting their business internationally and being compliant. And I think that's a stage where Afghanistan needs to leap to one day or another. We also have an extensive interview with the ambassador from the European Union to Afghanistan. That's more about what they're doing to help the trade in Afghanistan. If you're aware, they did a project previously about advancing Afghan trade, and that was meant to support exports in Afghanistan, and they put together the national export strategy as well. And I think I've personally read it, and it's very detailed, and I hope our government officials and also facilitators of trade, even businesses themselves, can take advantage of it. There's a lot of data in it as well. I think the other part of the magazine that you will like is the management pieces. This is on page 24 on reinventing yourself. This is written by Farishta Abdul Khalid. She's an influencer on LinkedIn, and a lot of people listen to her, especially now that we are at the beginning of 1399 in Afghanistan. So I hope you can take advantage of that. And also another management piece that we have is about customer service. I think we've been addressing it a few times. This is a little more advanced in trying to help businesses think through customer service. I think the part that I really like is how customer service is not really the function of just one or two people that we hire at the front, but in reality, everyone's job in the company. And I think our previous articles, if you read it in edition 6 and 7, we discussed this in depth as to why customer service really needs to improve in Afghanistan. I think we also have an article on empowering women leaders written by Nargis Jan Rahimi, who might be actually online right now. So thanks to her. I think another part that we're trying to expand to, we are a bit slow, but we will be reaching there, is to feature businesses that Afghan diaspora or entrepreneurs of Afghan descent open around the world. And one of that is the Snack Society that we're talking about, and how Kamila Omarzai is putting together this snack company, and it's doing pretty well in Dubai. I think another part of the private sector in Afghanistan is basically the contract economy and how implementing projects in some of the most difficult areas are being done by Afghan companies. I think that's the one you will read on page 60, the trailblazing operations of mega mining and infrastructure projects in Afghanistan. I think what I really like about that piece is how Mr. Jaffrey is sharing the difficulties it takes to implement projects in Afghanistan, especially the ones that require heavy logistics, such as in mining and also in infrastructure projects. I think you will like his recommendations there. Also, we have an article about public-private partnerships. At the same time, I think the map that is pretty massive, maybe this is the richest map that Afghanistan has, is about the mining on page 66, which summarizes all the mining that has been so far identified in Afghanistan. And I think people put it at $2 trillion or $3 trillion. But I think the matter of the fact is that we should, as the private sector, be able to participate in it and help explore and extract it. I think on page 32, given trade is such an important part of Afghanistan right now, I mean, we have been discussing how Afghanistan being such an import-dependent country is affecting Afghanistan, not just because what's happening within the country, for example, COVID-19, but actually makes it susceptible to shocks around the world because it's importing so much. So on page 32, we have a conversation with Mr. Haqjo, Afghanistan's ambassador to the WTO. But I'm not going to ruin all of the content for you. You will receive a free edition shortly. But the next part of the magazine, the cover story, usually this is the the most difficult part for me to decide. And it's usually we look through quite a lot of entrepreneurs, and it's hard. But I think the part that I really like is once we start talking with our candidates, stories come up that you wouldn't ever hear otherwise. So this round we're featuring someone from the legal sector in Afghanistan. This is a cross-cutting sector that is both helpful for the government to reform, but at the same time for the private sector to be able to operate in Afghanistan well. The great entrepreneur is educated both in Afghanistan, in India, and in the US, at Harvard Law School. And he has a lot to share about how he feels about Afghanistan as a patriot, and how he loves working for Afghanistan, and how he and his ethics and charisma has encouraged him to get into entrepreneurship and do so much more than he could in the government or in the international development sector. What I really like is his commitment. I think as entrepreneurs, we always look up to each other in terms of trying to take our companies forward. And what I like about his story is his deep commitment to the business. I think he tells a story of this one time where his both of his legs are actually injured, and he has a meeting to attend for a court in the US, and he runs to the office and drives his car with his left leg. And I think it's just amazing that what entrepreneurs can do. I will let you read the story yourself, but the cover story is Mr. Saiq Shajan. I think we tease him about, if our moderator can show the cover, we tease him about his name. I can't pronounce his name. Great personality. I like his charisma, a very senior person, very educated and dedicated to Afghanistan. So I'm not sure how we would clap, but at least on your behalf, I would clap for him for being featured on the cover. So thank you, Shajan Saib. You're on the call. I think I would like to have a few words with you about you being such an inspiration for a lot of us in the sector. Our moderator, if you can allow Shajan Saib to come on the screen. There you go, Shajan Saib, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the very kind introduction.
Thank you, Salamat.
I think you made
I like
me really
your
humble.
books in the background.
I really liked it, but I would object to that one word where you said very senior. I'm not very senior, man.
Well, compared to me, Shajan Saib.
Not what you do, yes, compared to yes.
No, thank you. I was teasing you. I think if you look at the entrepreneurs,
well, once again, thank you.
You're one of the very few, one of the very best in the legal sector, and it's not easy to be actually operating in the legal sector. Please go ahead and share a few words with our audience. I do have some questions as usual. I've asked you a lot of questions during the interviews, but I think I still have some more. Please, a few words to our audience. We have about a few hundred, I think 100 or more people.
Well, thank you so much. Once again, thank you. Thanks to your team and BusinessDNA for covering the story and also allowing me this opportunity to speak with you and also with our audience. I'm really grateful. It's honestly an honor to be here with you. I think I don't have much to say. I would say I would let them go read the story themselves. Other than that, as I said, Afghanistan is our love, not only mine, everybody's love. There's a lot that we can do for this country. I think we Afghans played a major role in destroying the country. And I think it's up to us to play our roles in helping the country stand back on its feet by whatever means that we can do that, whether it be in the private sector, that so many of us, we are helping little by little, that providing different opportunities and making sure that Afghanistan has a better image than what it does, or actually the way it is reflected oftentimes does not really show the true face of what Afghans are doing, what people do in Afghanistan. So it's up to us that we have to do more than what we're doing right now to kind of reflect on positive image of the country. And I think there's a lot of us, a lot more that honestly, I'm really proud of so many of them that they're doing such a wonderful job for this country. And I wish all of them the best. And I hope that we can all continue. And hopefully this COVID thing gets over with. And once the life is back to normal, I wish everybody continues what they're doing. And hopefully we will do much better than what we're doing right now for this country.
Thank you, Shahjahan Sahib. Thank you. I appreciate it. You're right. We have so many of our entrepreneurs, and that's exciting for Business DNA. So welcome to the family of our entrepreneurs that we have featured in Business DNA. I think the one other part that I really like about your story is when we asked you about you studied law at Harvard Law School, one of the best universities in the world, and you had the opportunity to actually stay there and continue working in the US. But you said that the scholarship that you were given wasn't yours, but actually the scholarship was given to Afghanistan and you had to go and give it back. Tell us a little bit more about us. When you wanted to come back to Afghanistan, what was in your mind? Did you want to start a business then, or you had no idea what you wanted to do? Tell us a little bit more about that, because we see, unfortunately, some scholarships reducing because people don't return. And here you are, you've returned and you're successful in doing so great for Afghanistan.
Thank you. I think that this is a very important question, and this is one of the topics that I always talk about. As you might know, I'm also volunteering my time for a scholarship program where we help scholars go get a study in the US and then come back. So I have this conversation quite often with different people in Afghanistan. So when I was studying in the US, obviously we had different families and the US and also in Canada. They're trying to encourage me to stay. Afghanistan is not safe. At least one or few people should be out so that way you can help the family. I said, well, no, it's not only about the family. It's about helping the people. It's about helping the country. And I was always sure that I'm going to go back to Afghanistan no matter what, because Afghanistan has given me so much. Who I am today is just because of Afghanistan. Had I not been an Afghan, had I been decided to go stay somewhere else, I would have been not the person who I am today. You would have not covered me today had I decided to stay in the US. I mean, Business DNA would have not covered me. So I think I was very sure that I'm coming. When I came back, initially, it was difficult to find a job. It took me 2 months. Initially, when I was studying at Harvard, I'm being frank with you and also with our audience. So I was thinking that, okay, you're going back to Afghanistan with this LLM degree from Harvard. I was one of the first people to return back with an LLM degree from Harvard. There are so many other colleagues that they studied in different schools, but a lawyer coming back to Afghanistan, I was the first. So when I came back, I was thinking that, okay, you would go and then there would be tons of opportunities waiting for you, but that was not the case. Honestly, 2 months, I applied so many different places. They're not even shortlisting me. Eventually, I found a good job working with the Civil Service Commission. I worked almost for 1.5 years or so. And then I thought that this is not the place. I cannot be really impactful. I cannot do a lot. I cannot help people here. So that's the time that I decided that, no, I need to do something that I'm really good at. So I started Shahjahan Associate. We started in 2011. I started by myself. Now it has grown up to 16, 17 lawyers and tax consultants. We have really established ourselves, our names. So this is why I always say that there are lots of opportunities for everyone in Afghanistan, no matter what you do, what your field of study is. Once you think about working, and it should not be always about money. There are so many other things that you should have in mind and set it as your goals, that these are the things that I'm looking for, that way you can help people, you can bring a change, you can be a leader of a change for your people and also for your country. So once you have that in your mind, then definitely successes follow you.
Yeah, thank you.
I answered your question.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I think that's the mantra that a lot of people would have, and the fact that you returned, it had to be that strong for you to work. So that's a great message to us and to the audience. I think the other part that that was always in my mind, and I asked you in the interview, is you have, on the one hand, you have sort of a government that is not to the fullest potential transparent, and unfortunately we keep ranking very low on corruption measures around the world. And then you also have on the other side, you have the private sector, and fine, we struggle quite a lot, but we are also not the most transparent. I think we acknowledge realities in Afghanistan. So how do you basically balance as a lawyer with ethical standards and things that you've studied at Harvard and the values that you operate with, and then operating in such a difficult environment where rule of law is not the strongest? What do you do? How do you operate basically?
Well, I think it is for us that how we are going to set our ethical and moral standards for ourselves. So once we set those for ourselves, for me, I cannot compromise on those, no matter what kind of business I'm losing. So I and my colleagues at our firm, we have zero tolerance policy towards corruption. At least we are not going to become part of it. I think that's the least that we can do for this country right now. There is no doubt that there is corruption in the system, wherever you're looking at the government. But at times, honestly, it's not really that bad that people are also talking about it. There are certain things that are good. We should talk about those also. There are a lot of people within the government that are really doing a wonderful job, trying and working hard day and night to help the country, help the system get a little bit transparent. But unfortunately, we do have problem. And it is very much up to every one of us that we need to not compromise on our morals, on our values that we set for ourselves. We do have problems. We face it from time to time. But as I said, if every one of us, we decide that the private sector, that no, we cannot become part of it. And even if there is a corrupt practice, let's say if there is someone who would try to somehow negotiate a deal with me that, well, we can give you this offer and there would be a percentage for us in it. If we say no to that, I think there is no one that the government or the corrupt elements within the government can benefit from. Yeah. So let's not only blame the government itself, but I think the private sector, there are certain individuals that unfortunately, they're also part of it. So it's very much, again, I would say that up to us that we need to combine ourselves and set that, okay, this is not how it's going to continue for the rest of our lives. We need to leave a legacy of transparency for our coming generations. We inherited a very bad Afghanistan, and now it is very much up to the current generation that what kind of Afghanistan we're leaving for our coming generations.
Thank you. You're right. You're right. The government has many people who are very reform-minded and they want to serve the private sector. And as you're saying, we have a role to play. And I think the part that I also enjoyed in the conversation with you is that younger entrepreneurs in Afghanistan and the ones who are just starting, and I think a lot of our audience today would be in terms of the maturity of the business, they are pretty young. And I think it might be difficult for them, but they do set a precedent if they start, giving in. And I think about the legal representation that you talked about, that, it's always best to actually have legal representation early in the process as we just starting, and it doesn't have to be very expensive. And as your company and many other legal companies, they may have pro bono, practices that they could help. So I think I'll let our readers read your story themselves and judge for themselves and reach out to you if they have questions. I think maybe we can take one or two questions from the audience from Shahjan Saib. If you have any questions about him, his practice, about the legal sector in Afghanistan, please let us know. I'm trying to look at the chat box. If not, then you will have an opportunity to ask questions later on as part of the panel as well. Okay. I think I'm not seeing any questions right now, so I think that's okay. Okay, what has been your biggest challenge? Shahjan said, what has been your biggest challenge?
Karthik, that's a very difficult question. This country is full of challenges. There are many. But honestly, I would say that practicing law in Afghanistan, one of the biggest challenges that I face. Everyone is talking about corruption, so we do have that corruption, and I think there are so many experts who would talk much better about it than what I would do. So the biggest challenge that I face in different institutions, the judicial system, every time that we walk in, we would complain from lack of capacity. That really bothers me. You would talk to a judge. Well, not every one of them. I'm not trying to generalize here, but there are many of them that they would not be really fit for their job. That bothers me the most. That you are a judge sitting somewhere and you're dealing or you're making decisions about fate of people's life, and you're not really competent for the job. You're not really trained properly to be a judge. Likewise, and so many other Afghan government institution, that is the thing that bothers me the most. That okay, you're taking all the kind of privileges that the government is giving you, but for God's sake, you're still not prepared, or you do not know the basics of what you're actually supposed to do.
Yeah, thank you. I think the other question that we have from the audience is, if you were to change something in the legal sector, I think maybe we could let's say one major thing in the legal sector, what would it be if you could change it? This is from our colleague from Ages Professional Services, Didar Sir. Thank you for the question, Didar Sir.
Thank you, Didar Sir. I think there's a lot that needs to be worked on, but as I just said, capacity. I would work on capacity, not the way that it has been done, unfortunately. I've been always raising my voice against it, the way that different international organizations, they came and they were providing short-term training courses for the judges, for the prosecutors, for attorneys. So there's not much that you can gain with that. Let's say there's a training program that has spent a lot of money, but at the end of the day, they would provide a 2 to 3 days of a training course. With 2-3 days training course, you cannot train someone to be a lawyer. You cannot teach at least the basic ethics of their profession.
Yes.
So I would invest on building the capacity and the judicial system of Afghanistan.
Yeah, thank you. I think 2 other questions were there. One I will try to answer because it's already in the story. So one was about what characters you have that made you successful so far. I think that's something that once you read the story, Mr. Shayan from Startup Community, I think you will read that in the magazine. We have one whole page, lessons learned from Shajan's side. I think the other question that I would also like to answer off is from Shirshah Rahim from IAP. He asks, what do you do when your clients don't abide by the contract? So if you have a contract with another private company maybe, and they don't abide by the contract's terms, what do you do?
Well, there are many ways of dealing with that. It depends that how severe the situation would get. I would try to avoid going to the court because we do have our problems over there. We would try to somehow, it depends on the contract itself, that what kind of terms it has laid out, that when there is a dispute, when there's a problem between the 2 parties, how you're going to resolve that. So the first thing that I would do, I would go by the terms of the contract. And then secondly, there are many ways that I think we do not have the time to talk about it, but try to settle it and make sure that they understand the terms of the contract. If not, then the last option would be to resort to the judicial process.
Okay. That's the right way to do it. And obviously, I think in some of the editions of the magazine, we have talked about alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. And obviously, I think Sher Shajan meant something as last resort when you have nothing else to do. But I think there are options that you can try before that. I think we can, thank you so much, everyone, for your questions. I think hopefully once you read this story, you will get the answers. But we have to continue because we have promised that we would keep this very a quick launch. I would like to, before moving to the next part of the launch, I would like to thank some of our contributors to the magazine. If our moderator can put the team photos, just to give them recognition. I think they're heroes who have worked very hard to make each edition happen. I thank every one of them. I would particularly like to thank Jamshid John Habibi. He's working very hard to bring in the content that you're enjoying today. Same with our colleagues, Mansour John, Ruid, it is John Salehi. I think Diba John Qasimi, Shabnam John did the interview with Akhjo Saib, and she had to travel and spend the whole day trying to get the questions and answers. And same thing with Tanya John as well, helping us with the strategy. I think Sarah Wahidi, I told you about, she started her own application. I think that's a great initiative. She helped put together the main story. Nargis has written a story and edited a lot of articles for us, Sarah Rahim, Allah Hajan, Mushtaba, and the rest of the team. And also our contributors who have written articles for us. I think you will see it at the beginning of the magazine. Please reach out to them. If you don't agree with them, you can email them and ask them questions. If you have questions from Shahjan Saab, you can reach out to them through their website. Same way with all of our authors, and we will be happy to pass on your questions as well. I think the other part of the business DNA that usually keeps us going is our advertisers. We appreciate their investment. That's my company. Yes, we put a lot of effort into each edition of the magazine and sponsor it with advertising. We also have more companies like Vision and a media company by AMR Group. Also, we have, if you can move the slides, there you go. Doobie.af, I think this is a great service. I would use it because they wash your clothes and bring it back to you if you have a very busy schedule. Thanks to M-Pesa for supporting the magazine as well. And I think we have the German clinic. I'm not sure if they're treating COVID-19 yet, but they are a service I've personally used. Same thing with Vesta Solar. I think they're innovative. They want to try some new things with solar. So try them out if you're trying to invest in solar in your home or facilities. Zood Mall is very new to the market. I think the moment it's launched, you will be able to buy a lot from around the world. More Afghanistan is our holding company, so I'm not gonna promote it too much. I think you can go and search about it. Same thing with Dr. Ahmad Salar. It's a small business. I think he told me that he had to entirely almost 90% close his business because people cannot visit his business. So I hope after the COVID-19 you would pay him a visit if you have treatment to do with your teeth. Also we have Hisab Pay and Babar, all innovative companies that are trying to serve Afghanistan. So thanks to them for advertising with us as well. And AfghanNet, the internet company. I do hear that Kabul is experiencing quite a lot of internet shortages these days. So I hope that you can find some partners who can provide the right internet. So before, I'm not going to talk too much about the rest. We have a panel discussion now that it's about how to cope with COVID-19 in Afghanistan. This is more for businesses. So I will let Sanzar Kokar lead and moderate the panel and introduce the panel members. Thank you so much for staying with us so far.
Assalamu alaikum. Great. So I'll ask the panel members. I'll try to welcome them to the stage. So each one of you can join us here. So we have Mujadid, we have Suleiman bin Shah. I'll be asking you to come onto the stage. Shahjan Saib is already here. Akbar John here. We're going to add. We have Firdaus John. Let's see if we can get you up here as well. There we go. We're missing Suleiman. All right. Suleiman, can you hear us?
Salam. Yes, I can hear you. I think there is some problem with my camera, so maybe I'll start my camera later.
Sure, no problem. So we'll get started with a panel. We wanted to discuss particularly what's on the news with everyone, discussing COVID-19. and how businesses, in particular in Afghanistan, need to react to COVID-19. One is how COVID-19 is treating the businesses. There's a lot of closures, there's delays, there's uncertainty, what's going to happen. But then more importantly is how we need to respond. Perhaps we could go around and have each of the panel members introduce themselves briefly. And then if they want to mention anything about the current situation and any tips or advice, and then we'll open it up to the team and have them ask any questions that they might want. So let's start with BusinessDNA.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here on this panel. I would like to congratulate everyone on the holy month of Ramadan. Although we are facing a difficult time in terms of the COVID-19 outspread and the restrictions we are facing, but at least we have the pleasant month of Ramadan and the mercies and rahmat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these difficult times. I'm helping manage the Afghanistan Holding Group company, and pleasure to be here on the panel with all of you.
Wonderful. Suleiman, if you can hear us, feel free.
Salam to everyone. This is Suleiman bin Shah. Thank you very much for having me in this event. So I run a small consulting firm in Kabul. It's called Catalyst Afghanistan. Previously, I was working with the government of Afghanistan, specifically with the Ministry of Industry and Commerce as Director General Trade Policies. And before that, I was also helping the government of Afghanistan to promote investment opportunities in Afghanistan, working with the Afghanistan Investment Support Agency. And that was when I had a chance to meet also Mr. Shahjan. So I'm really glad to be here today.
Wonderful. Shahjan said we've introduced from you, but I'll get back to you about COVID-19 specifically as well. Arhan said, you have many businesses. I just saw Satara as one of them here, but there's others as well.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Akbar Gandiwal. I'm the CEO of Satara, as it says there. I also run a logistic company, a legal company, a real estate company, and soon to be another online platform. Thank you for inviting me. I want to say just a few things. Mr. Shahjan, congratulations, well deserved. And San Sarjan, you being part of DNA, I know this thing is magazine with no prices, and I want to also congratulate BusinessDNA for having you. I think they hit a gold mine, and congratulations to all of you.
Thank you. Wonderful. Firdaus John, last.
Thank you, Randy. Also, thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Firdaus Samim. I'm an architect. I am the CEO and founder of Talk Inc. Talk Inc. is an architecture and engineering design firm that I started around 2012. Currently, we are holding an office in Kabul. We've been doing some interesting projects and activities at our end.
Wonderful. So now if we could get into the topic of how businesses in Afghanistan can respond, which is said, we'll just keep going in this order. How has been the impact of the virus, and what do you suggest businesses should do to respond to it?
Thank you very much, Sanjarjan. I think it's an important question. There is no doubt that the pandemic has affected all sectors all around the world, including Afghanistan. We in the private sector have also faced a lot of difficulties. We really need to be realistic to the restrictions and the consequences of this pandemic. And then I think it's important for businesses to be able to adapt to the changed situation. Unless we have the flexibility of adapting, I think it can the prolonged lockdowns and the restrictions can have very grave consequences on each and every business. In order to adapt, we need to take action and take action in good time and appropriate action. I think it's important to be able to manage and run the business the best possible way under the given circumstances. Taking action with, for instance, in our case, where we are a service provider with different types of brands, we took the action of giving priority to the safety and health of our employees and of our team. So probably one of the first companies we went to work from home on the 18th of March, limiting the exposure of our staff to the virus and allowing them to work alternatively from home. It all had its challenges, but we really had to be proactive in giving them the tools they need to work from home. And then again, as part of this, I think it's important that we communicate information to staff and keep them abreast of the developments. We need to do this in a trustworthy, in a compassionate, and stable way, so that we have continuous communication, ongoing reach to the team. We need to be helpful, that they can adjust, provide them the necessary support that they need, and basically make them reset themselves so that they are successful in what they do. And as part of that, I think we can never under-communicate. We always have to communicate as frequently and as regularly as possible. We have to be realistic about the changes that are coming. And at the same time, I think we have to be able to give hope to our employees, to our business, and give them the sense that we are all in this together, and that if we are united and take the appropriate actions, we would inshallah come out of this and be able to return to normal business. So those were just a few points that I think are important for us in order to respond to the COVID-19.
Wonderful, thank you so much. That's very helpful. We're getting lots of questions in, which are really, really great. So going down the line, Suleiman bin Shah, one question is about motivating the workforce. Any ideas about how we can keep the team in all our companies motivated during these unprecedented times? And what can we do to keep their spirits up?
I can just give my point of view, but I think the question should be open for anyone to answer. Yes, I think it's important to be motivating. It's a very difficult time for everyone. And I think doing some online trainings, having regular meetings with your team, helping them understand the changing situations and how to respond and how to adjust, and I think giving them more of autonomy. It's not a time of micromanaging. Give them autonomy, give them tasks, and have them do it on their own, so they're motivated.
Suleiman, can you hear us all right?
Yes, I can. Thank you so much. So with the motivation part, I would like to say that you see, the most important thing right now would be to stay in touch with people. And by people, I mean people in the company and people outside the company. That includes customers as well. But how to motivate the workforce that small businesses have can be very challenging, because if the business is not doing well, there are no financial incentives. And of course, when there are no financial incentives, the motivation level cannot be kept with other types of tactics. So it's quite challenging to do that. But I think the most important action that businesses can take is to stay as close to their workforce as possible. And that would include, getting them awareness, giving them education and what's happening around, and having a perspective of what can be done for the future. I think the tunnel looks very dark here, but with the team and everyone, one area that everybody can look into is the customer behavior, because the societies and the communities that we live in and the businesses operate, and customer behavior can be predicted to some extent because everybody's affected by the pandemic and by the crisis that's happening around. So it's quite challenging to keep them motivated, but I think a consistent approach and making them feel that everybody is in this together would be the most important task that they would do.
Yeah. Wonderful, thank you. We're getting lots of wonderful questions. I'm going to group a couple of them together. One of them, Shahjan said, is about helping the people that are below the poverty line. So a lot of them are suffering because they're daily wage earners and they're not able to go out to work and they're at home. And particularly in this month of Ramadan, what are some ideas for how businesses can help those that are struggling and the people survive?
Thank you, Kakar. There is no doubt that this is a time of great uncertainty and stress for everyone, for us, for billionaires, for poor people in the country. As you correctly pointed out, this is the month of Ramadan. Anyway, we are doing a lot of donations and charity work, and this is the time that your rewards will be multiplied by Allah. So the more that we can lend that helping hand to the poor, to whatever extent that we can, I think this is the right time for it. You have this disaster. Whenever you drive around in the city, you can see a lot of people that the number of the poor people, the beggars, they've increased dramatically. So this is the time, but whatever mean that you can try to help them and lend that helping hand, I think that is what is needed. The we can do, I think all the business sectors, we do have that corporate social responsibility also, and this is the time to come up with that responsibility. The corporate social responsibility has been incorporated in legislation of certain countries, that you do have the responsibility to contribute toward welfare of the society, help people, help the government. And I think this is the right time that we need to do whatever we can. Whether it be by ourselves, that I, Shahjan, I do whatever I can to help, like starting from our immediate families, from our neighbors, from our friends, and then going to others that whosoever we can help. And then the other important thing that what the corporate sector can do, I think this is a time that we need to come together and have a uniform voice and make sure that we do something that is really impacting the lives of the people. This is not going to be forever. Of course, this is a dark tunnel ahead. We don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm sure that we will come out of it, and we will come out of it strong. And this is the time that we really need to help everyone, help our colleagues within our companies, and then think about others and how we can help other people.
Exactly. Randewal said, I have two questions for you. Many people are asking about startups and what strategies can startups to take to survive this period. So any tips for them, given the challenges? And the second question is about supply chain. How are the supply chains affecting big or small businesses because they're not able to move goods in and out as easily? So I know you give a lot of advice both for startups and you know a lot about the supply chain. So I think it'd be great if you could address those two areas.
Thank you very much, Shahjan. For the startup, I like to tell them, first of all, chill out. You're starting something, your financial gain or loss is at minimum. It's the best time to stay home, study, read a book, get in touch with your mentors. If there are any, I'll be glad to help. I work with email more than anything else. I'm an old-fashioned big guy. But main thing is that don't sweat over this because it will pass. Understand that there's always light at the end of the tunnel. Everything that happens in our life, it passes eventually. So, this. And when they open a new business, of course, they're very nervous. They have invested in it. They have worked thought about it for a long time, and wow, something happens and it stops everything. Simply relax. This will pass. And at the same time, it's a great opportunity to learn about your trade and sharpen these skills. Read books, and also learn from your seniors. That's all I can tell to the startups. For the established companies, there are different issues where their financial loss for the companies and for employees are much greater extent versus the startups. But as far as the startups community is concerned, they need to chill out. This will pass from month to month, and they will be able to walk out of the house. And my biggest advice to them is stay home for now, and help yourself and help others not get sick. For the supply chain, that's a big thing. In Afghanistan especially, everything virtually has to stop, and even people who have permissions to move goods from place to another place, even they get in trouble with the Ministry of Interior, police, everybody else stop them, and that's the biggest challenge. And how do you get food in every shop in Kabul is an amazing endeavor where we go through so many challenges to make sure that we supply our customers. Regionally, by province, by city is not a big deal. However, if you're in the business of moving things internationally or between provinces, there's a huge problem. Working with the Minister of Interior internally, domestically in Afghanistan, is a key to make sure they understand who you are, make sure that they understand that you provide essential services, force them to give you permission for movement. It doesn't happen politely. You have to basically, crack some eggs to get your omelet, basically. Yeah. Internationally, everything is a stop. I mean, we talk with airlines, with transport companies every single day, as we have warehouses full of tons of dry fruits and nuts that need to go outside the country. Hope for the day that this will be over as far as supply chain internationally is concerned.
Yeah, that's very good to know. This too shall pass, and we have to push to make sure that we're going to, because when supply chains stop, prices go up. The more we can keep goods flowing, we can help feed more people, food, medicine, all these essential services. Very good. So now when we get to those John in here, we're getting a lot of questions about digitalization and how to maybe adapt to the digital side. More and more people are at home. How do you connect to your customers and keep them engaged and keep talking to them? So any tips that you have for tools or ideas for continuing to talk to your customers, even though everyone's at home right now instead of in office?
That's one of the good things about, let's say, of course, the COVID-19 has brought so many challenges that, of course, especially in a country like Afghanistan, there has been, as long as we remember, for instance, our generation, at least, we have never witnessed any time without any challenge. So this is just another layer at the top of all of those already challenges in place. There are some pros with amid the COVID-19. And for instance, one of them is that using the technology right now. The first thing, what I believe can help is to build the website, because in Afghanistan, when it comes to marketing and come to have a better exposure for businesses, especially for SMEs, having a website is the last thing that they are thinking. And it had never been taken as seriously as today. So start small. It doesn't have to be something perfect. It doesn't have to be something like comprehensive with all of the things that you have inside your mind so that your business can expose in the market through your website. We can start small. This is the first thing. In addition to that, what we can use the best out of this time is to educate ourselves. Educate ourselves how to use the new techniques, educate ourselves about using the new tools that right now we can use, because this pandemic, it's of course it's gonna end. We still don't know, or sooner or later, but it is gonna end. But what remains is after that, once it's done, because right now it's a big milestone for the whole world, not just for the business industry, for all the industries around the globe. And when it's over, and basically when we go back to normal, that normal is not going to be the normal that we spent, that we left behind. It's going to be completely different, and the whole methods of communications, methods of business, it's going to be different. Therefore, it's a new era. Therefore, we have to be ready right now, and having good exposure using technology is what's going to be needed even after this pandemic is over. And I believe after the website, the social medias, of course, they are going to be integrated. We should be able to use the new tools for communication. For instance, right now, Zoom. Zoom is turning out to be one of the the topics that right now the whole world is talking about. Even in the United Nations, they are taking, holding their whole general meetings right now using Zoom. While before this, I knew Zoom, but I hadn't used it before. But right now, it's in the past 3 to 4 weeks, I have used it at least twice a week, while I didn't know about it this much before. So these are the tools and things that people have to learn and start practicing using them.
Yeah. So Murtaza John just messaged me that I should, give some thoughts as well to some of this. So I think what's the biggest error for me is trying to see the blessings in all of it. It's there's so many wonderful things that are coming out of this. Just to be able to spend more time with your family, less time traveling, less time. This meeting, for example, we're able to have people all over the world as opposed to just a few people that are able to make it to a hotel. To be able to have time for a lot more things. The air is much cleaner in a lot of places. We're learning about children now more and more, how all over the world being at home has a lot of the good effects, where the parents are with the kids and experiencing a lot at home, having more free time as opposed to structured time. In Afghanistan particularly, I think it's helped people have time to study, like Randawal said, have time to think about their life in the future and how fragile this world is, especially during this month of Ramadan, to keep thinking about the greater purpose for what we're here to do. In terms of tools, everything you can do to keep in touch, Zoom, email, phone, WhatsApp. There's so many tools and apps now. The more you can use it, the better to keep in touch. We don't want people to be isolated, but be careful that you don't, like Mujisef said, micro manage them too much. Give them what they need to do, and then they have the flexibility to do it. People don't spend as much time commuting to and from work, and they don't have the headache of traffic and all the smog and all the headaches from that. And they can see what's most important in life and try to focus on that. So being able to see the blessings is also very, very important, not only personally, for your business, for your family, for your health, all those different areas. This is a big gift in many cases, if you can see that side of it. That's mine. We have Murtaza John. He wants to ask a question as well. So let me bring him on board here. Murtaza John. And then maybe you could take it on from that as well. Murtaza John, are you there? Yes, now we can.
Yes. Thank you. Sorry to our audience, you have to see my face again. But I had a question because we would like to give some of the insights from this panel, because most of us are, basically all of us are from the private sector. Maybe just talk a little bit about what would be the 2 things that we would like for each of our companies from the government to do. What can the government do? Maybe they have the money and they're thinking about ways to help the private sector and also our international partners. So what can they do? I mean, anyone can answer, any of you. What do we expect them to do? I know it's a tough question, but I think it might be.
What do you expect?
Yeah.
Well, I think, let me say this, there is a lot that the government can do. I think this is the time that every now and then, everyone, whether it be as Afghans in Afghanistan that we have been criticizing the government, whether it be the international community, that they've been criticizing the government of Afghanistan for not doing much. I think as colleagues talk about the blessings, I think this is the time for the government of Afghanistan that they can have a blessing out of this also, to prove to the people that we are here, we are a government, we can respond to a situation like this, and we can help people of Afghanistan. I think there's a lot. Let's not talk about us. A lot of people will say, well, they can cut taxes and stuff like that. No, they should not do that. I do not expect them to do. As long as they can remain transparent with what they do, that's more than enough. But I think this is the time that they should really think about how they can help people, how they can bring transparency within the system. I feel really bad when I see some of the senior members of the government that they would share on social media that, hey, we did this COVID test and we are coming all negative out of this. No, this is not the time that you should do it. We should provide those facilities that no doubt that there's a scarcity of the medical facilities that we have in Afghanistan. So whatever that we have, provide those to the people who are in need of those. There are people that they've been complaining that I've been like trying to get my tests done for so many days and no one is giving me the opportunity. So this is the time that the government official, they should give up on their personal things and say that, okay, I'm giving up and I would like this opportunity to be given to the actual people of Afghanistan. I would repeat it again. This is the time that the government should prove to the people of Afghanistan that we are here and we will be with our people in difficult time and we will do whatever it takes to help the people.
Okay. Sandra John, what do you need? Maybe I think I see the videos in a row, so I'll ask you then, and then I will just move to Mujahid Saib and Fardal John and everyone. 2 things that you would want the government to do.
The lockdown has been one area, but I think I'm actually wondering if the government can add more certainty in terms of a plan for when we're going to open. If they see a certain number of cases declining every week, or some sort of way, a plan, so that we know. Right now, we don't know when it's going to open again. We don't know what's going to happen, and that uncertainty is really difficult for business. If we know that, okay, it's going to be 2 weeks and then, or Eid or whenever it is, then we can plan. That's when we'll open our businesses. That's when we're going to work on it. And maybe, there's some countries that are looking that are not that badly affected. India has not been that badly affected. Afghanistan, some are saying because it's certain vaccines that we've already gotten in these developing countries. And so we're less prone to coronavirus. There's other, theories as well. But hopefully, if we can have a clear plan for how we can restart, I think that would be very helpful for the private sector.
Okay, thank you, Mujahid Saib. I know someone is asking which government are you talking about. I would like to say that joke.
Well, I think that's also part of the problem.
Yes.
Our government also has a lot of difficulties and issues. We are not in a stable situation. The government is fighting a war right now. Also on the battlefields, we have our resource limitations and the uncertainty of the COVID-19 all around the world makes it very difficult, even for very well-established, strong, financially and otherwise strong governments. So for Afghanistan, I think it's even more difficult. But certain measures where they can show that they're really working for the benefit of the general masses, try to see if they can attract more support for testing COVID-19 and providing the basic equipment, masks and gloves and everything for at least for the frontline respondents in the health sector, and trying to have the economy move to an extent where the regular ordinary people are at least able to feed themselves. So that will be all you could expect right now from the government.
Thank you, Mujahid Nisab. Yes, definitely. And I think we don't want to turn this into a political discussion, but I think it's because some comments are whether the government has done much or not. But in general, I think the idea is that we give them, if we can, ideas as to how they can do it. I mean, we understand the limitations. The country is in the midst of war, unfortunately. But more about the how part of it. What are some of the creative ideas that they can use to, cope with this? Firdaus John?
First of all, like right now we have a government, and this is not the worst case right now. We have been through worse.
Yeah.
So, compare, okay, whether we have right now this government on the, let's say, Taliban, so still we are lucky. What the government can do right now, because there are a lot of things that they are doing, there's a lot of problems, a lot of challenges they are facing every day that are, most of them are not even worth the try and the energy that are being wasted. One of the good things that right now is that the government right now should start digitalizing the whole structure and practicing it. Because we are all talking about transparency, corruption, and all of these things, and like the private sector, especially the ones who are more digitalized, the companies that we see, and they also see that how much transparency is well practiced there, how much the corruption can be gotten even close to zero, if not zero, but a lot closer to zero. The crowd is very less. They have right now a lot of good opportunities. And also, there has been a big gap, this mistrust between the government and the private sector. In the past 2 decades, we have seen like either of the fault were from both ends. They either at some points there were the government's fault, at some in the private sector's fault. But right now, the private sector that we see today, that there are a lot of good parts in the private sector right now that they can do a lot of good in the government. But both sides are really scared. Both sides are really scared of getting in touch with each other, let alone doing something, working on something jointly. So I think right now is the best time to first, of course, they must first digitalize to start something from zero, baby steps. And once the pandemic is over, like if the government is able to have at least 70% of the structure, like even not 70, let's say like 50% of the structure digitalized, I can say that could be like a good legacy.
An opportunity there, yes, definitely an opportunity.
Government, it is for the whole public.
Yeah,
so that's on the top of my head.
Yeah, very good lesson learned. I think it's same for the private sector that I think we talked about earlier. Ghandiwal Saib, what are your 2 cents about how they can? We're trying to help here.
Well, the 2 important things that the government right now could do, since the government doesn't have money, provide tax relief to businesses, and start now giving them a hope that after this thing is over, the employees and the companies will receive some sort of a release from this burden. And that would be very, very important that we talk about maybe subsidize utilities, help businesses that way, release them from taxes for a period of time. But the other thing is also, the second thing, in my opinion, is that the government needs to communicate better, not just things related to the virus and prevention. I think a lot has been communicated, in my opinion, but things like my company needs to move from place A to place B. What do I need to do if I provide essential services? Where do I go to get a card or a approval, a road pass? Nobody knows this, and somebody was mentioning in the messages that how do you do that? How do you force the government? Established businesses, we've been in the business long enough that we're known to the government. They know us. Some sort of needs to has a pass, he will get a pass. Like somebody else will get a pass. What happened to the small business? You know, it's government's responsibility to communicate now how people can move if they provide essential services. There is no communication on that. It is the not the health minister's job, but Interior Ministry and others responsible for this, how to manage people and how to manage infrastructure. Now they must communicate that with people, because I hear there's a lot of trouble in Kabul. Not sure about other provinces, but in Kabul we have a major problem. People who must be outside, must be working, and they're providing essential services. But since they're not government entities, they're private sector, they don't know how to get out. And when they get out, they get their challenge is the police.
Yeah, thank you, Randy said. Suleiman John, you've had a career in the government, maybe more than many of us. What do you think?
Oh, interesting. Interesting question. I think there's not a lot that we can expect, unfortunately, from the government. I would second the thoughts of Randy Walsep here. There's not a lot that the government can do financially. However, tax relief would be great. But just to give you an idea of how other governments are doing this in the world as an example, is that they are not only announcing financial packages for small and medium businesses, helping them to go through this challenge, but they're also providing them, you know, access to information and guidelines and resources and you know, all sorts of education. I understand, agree that access to technology or internet is not bad in Afghanistan. I mean, you know, people have some access to technology and to internet, but I think again the challenge is how to navigate through those resources given the context of Afghanistan, and that's where I think the private sector of Afghanistan has a bigger role. And to be very clear, the private sector of Afghanistan does not necessarily means the typical traditional associations that we have. I'm talking about the emerging networks and emerging platforms that we see now, because the dudes who are sitting there at the traditional associations, they have remedy for everything from a border blockage to pandemic crisis, and I don't think they have much to offer to the small businesses. So I think this is a point where these new platforms have a bigger role, and I think I expect a lot coming from these new platforms and emerging platforms, and you know, I would even name it, for example, Aghez, you know, the Darseb and Ansari Seb and Mati John and others, you know, they have a bigger role, and maybe through SEEN, you know, and even Kakar Seb, Afghanistan Holding Group, you know, to think about a platform where, you know, so that they can help small businesses navigate through the resources that they need to do. And I'm not talking about financial resources, but, you know, more of education and awareness and you know, guiding them through the processes of how to motivate their workforce, how to study around, how to have an eye on the global supply chain disruption, and how things are going to go and shift in the short term and long run. So what the government can do, and what we really expect from the government, is to engage. And I think they have failed so far, you know, to engage small businesses. And this is very natural in Afghanistan. 24, if you dissect the 24 hours that the government spends on, a lot of it is spent in security and politics. So there is very small or little amount of time given to small businesses.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sure.
Sandavashin, thank you so much. I think a lot of insights. We could discuss this for even more hours, but I think our audience had committed a certain amount of time. So thank you to all of our panel members. Thank you, Sandra John, for moderating it and taking the questions. I would like to encourage everyone to please go ahead and read the magazine. It's provided for free. That's at the least that BusinessDNA can do. So stay home, stay safe, and enjoy the read. And thank you for participating in the launch today. Thank you very much.